Okay, third grade, this week we are using place value to help us round. So we are working on page 70 right now, so I'll need you in your instruction book. It will say third mathematics instruction, and I need you to turn to page 70. It should look exactly like what you see on my screen. It should say lesson 8, use place value to round numbers. Now, I'm going to be actually working the problems out and talking you through this page on paper, but I wanted you to make sure that you understand where I'm getting this information from. All right, the first thing that you should see when you look at this page is you're going to see a place value chart right here. And it tells you to use the number 384. And we want to figure out what two tens, so we're looking at our tens place, does this number fall between? Which two hundreds? So then we'll be looking at our hundreds place. And we're going to use our place value chart to help us. All right, letter A says, including the hundreds, so we want to make sure we keep that 3 that you see in the hundreds place because we want to include that. Including the hundreds, how many tens are in 384? So what does that mean? It means we're going to keep our hundreds and we're going to also go to the tens place because it says how many tens. But we want to include the hundreds. Include means keep it. So if I keep this 3 and I look at the tens place, how many tens would it take? If I wanted to build that using only tens blocks, what would I need? I would need 38 tens. So what I want you to write in that blank is I want you to write 38 tens. Now, the reason we're keeping the 3 is because it told us, it said include the hundreds. So that's why we still have this 3. And then why do we have the 8? Well, that's because the 8 was in the tens place. If I was using only tens, I would have to have 38 tens to make 380. Okay, let's look at letter B. Letter B, I'm sorry, there's still a second part to A. So let's continue on with A. A also says, what is the next greatest number of tens? So right now we have 38 tens. If I jumped up one more 10, what would I have? 39 tens. That's correct. So in your second blank, we're going to put 39 tens. Now we can go to letter B. Letter B says, how do you write both of these numbers of tens as numerals? Well, that's very easy if you remember your place value chart. If I only want to keep my 38 tens and my 39 tens, what's going to happen to the ones place? Remember, I don't want to keep it. So what are we going to have to put in place of where this 4 is? We need a placeholder. What digit do we use for a placeholder? Yes, we use a 0. So how would we write these if we're using that placeholder for our ones place? Well, we would write it just like this. 38 with a 0 now in the ones place because I do not want those 4 ones. And 39 with a 0 because I do not want those ones place. I just want my 2 tens. Now, the reason we're doing this is because we're finding the tens that our 384 would be between. Remember on my interactive notebook where I talked about using a number line? If we were to put 384 on our number line or on our roller coaster, we would want to start our roller coaster at 380 and 390. because 384, would go about right here on my roller coaster if this was on a number line. So the reason we found our tens is so we could figure out what number 384 would be between. And we now know it's between 380 and 390. Okay? C, let's go to C part. C part says, between which two tens does 384 fall? Well, we just found those on letter B. So what were the two tens that we're going to put 384 between? 380, good, and 390, correct. Those would be the two tens that 384 would fall between. Okay, let's look at D. How many hundreds do you see in the number 384? How many hundreds are there? Yeah, 3 of them. There's a 3 in the hundreds place. So on letter D, we're going to put the number 3. The second question says, what's the next greatest number of hundreds? If I move up from 300, what would come next? 400. So on letter D, we're going to put 3 in the first blank and 4 in the second blank. Now what we're doing now is we're finding the hundreds that we would round to. So A, B, and C, and I'm going to make a note here on my paper that A, B, and C was when we were rounding for that 10 spot. Now we're switching and we're looking at our 100 spot. All right, let's look at letter E. E says, how do you write both of these numbers of hundreds as numeral? Well, how would we write that 300 as a numeral? What would 300 look like? That's right, 3, 0, 0. And what about that 4? 4, 0, 0, 300 and 400. So if I was using a number line to round to the hundreds place on my roller coaster, hundreds place would start with 300 because that's what's in our hundreds place, and it would end at 400. And 384, remember, would be somewhere over here if we were looking at the hundreds place. Okay, we'll get to the roller coaster later. Right now we're just looking for those place value numbers. All right, last question on page 70. Letter F. Between which two hundreds does 384 fall? Well, we just put that on our roller coaster. What were those two hundreds? 300 and 400. So in letter F, we're going to have 300 again and 400 again. Okay, if you have any questions on page 70, please ask. Now keep in mind, this is just kind of an overview of what we're going to be doing. Now your book is going to have you doing rounding using number lines a lot. Now I'm also going to be teaching you not just with number lines, but also with those rounding buddies, your strong buddy and your weak buddy. So we will do a lot of practice with both of those. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start a new video, and I'm moving to page 71, and we'll go over page 71 together also.